All right. We are through, I think, 25 weeks now in the Canadian Premier League, Mitchell, and we now know the 5 teams that are going to be in the CPL playoffs already. We already knew it was Forge and Ottawa. Last week, we learned it would for sure be Cavalry and Halifax Wanderers. And this weekend, York United, for a third straight year, are playoff bound. They beat Valor 1-0. It was a pretty, I think, professional performance from York United, who see Julian Altobelli get back in the team, score just before halftime, and then they see out the clean sheet. So because we talked about Cavalry and Halifax last week, Mitch, we should give York their due and talk about their season under Mauro Eustachio. His first year as a head coach. Mitch, what has impressed you over this season about kind of the way that they've developed and grown under him?
Yeah, I think what's impressed me most, if you look at the totality of the season, is just the compete level from this team. Like they're in every game.
Yeah.
I think it's only one game this season they've lost by more than one goal, and that was that disappointing 4-0 in Halifax. Otherwise, it's been a one goal loss or even better, right? Like they've been consistently in every game. I think Forge are the only other team in the league that have only lost one game by more than one goal this season. So, they're right there in terms of competing with those top clubs in terms of, being in every game. And you look at the compete level, and obviously, that's manifested itself in a lot of yellows, a lot of fouls, some suspensions, even that kind of thing. But I do think there's an edge with which this team plays that even when you look at those teams around them, like we talked about Halifax, we talked about Cavalry last week, like they're liable to have a game or two off every once in a while. And we even see that this weekend, with Halifax going away to Vancouver and dropping, 3 points, and, Cavalry can't get the job done in the nation's capital. That's not been the case with this York team. Like even on their off days, they're still right there and they're still right in games. And we know this time of year that those games are going to be incredibly close. And this York team lives kind of in that, in being very comfortable with these close games and these tight scenarios and being competitive within them. So that's what I've really loved about this York United team this season, and how Mauro Eustachio's kind of instilled that compete and belief within this group that, again, no matter the opponent, no matter the venue, they're going to be right in the game. And, more times than not, they're going to get something out of it.
And that's another big thing about this team is that they've, and Mauro talked about this a little bit yesterday after the game, is they've matured a lot over this season, right? I think the first 7 games of their CPL campaign, they lost points from winning positions 5 times. Right? Yeah. They were continually scoring early in games, and then just not able to hold on. Whereas, yesterday I watched York go up 1-0 against Valor, and they could have played for another 3 hours and they probably wouldn't have conceded. Right. And I mean, Valor weren't really offering a lot going forward, to be fair. But I think that was kind of an all around positive from York in an afternoon where there were a lot of positives, right? They have been forced to kind of adjust at the back, where they're playing in a 4-3-3 instead of a 3-4-3 because, partly because they don't have Oswaldo Leon the rest of the year because he's suspended. They didn't have Niall Higgins or Luke Singh in this game. So they go to a back 4 for just the second time this entire season, the first being 2 weeks ago in Ottawa. They've got Elijah Atakubi playing in a 2-man center back position for the first time all season. He's done well in a 3-man, but he did well here in a 4. And I think that they looked really, really good defensively. And among the other positives for York from this game, Julian Altobelli hadn't scored for 8 games. He's their leading scorer. He'd been on the bench or not in the squad at all for 5 straight. He comes back in, and his first start back, he scores right before halftime with a pretty textbook finish from him. Just across the board, Mitch, this is a York team that I think is improving at the right time of the season. And for me, at least, it makes it, a team that I don't think anybody will really want to see in the playoffs, right?
No, and I think, with Altobelli now getting back in the goals, like it's something we've talked about all year, and this York team scored more than they've ever scored before. Like there's an attacking depth to this team that is immense, and they're all players that are proven within this league, and they're all guys who have had really good runs this season and are game breakers in games. Even Hundle coming off the bench for Altobelli or vice versa. You look at Farron, you look at Reed, you look at Batar, Sholajimo coming off the bench. Like there's so many guys, Lionel Lopez, who's been playing as more of a number 10 in the past few weeks as they kind of shift to this new system. Like, they have so many goal dangerous players, and this time of year when you need those goals, to have that many different options and that many different guys, it's always been one or two for York, right? It's always been your Brian Wright
Yeah.
and Mo Babuli, or Ozaze De Rosario and Mo Babuli, I guess. It's always been like one or two guys who have been, your goal scoring threat. But I don't think I've ever seen a York team that like this, that has so many different attacking threats. And again, that's why they can stay in games in part. Like, obviously the defensive side's been decent, but they've struggled at times. But they can always count on, scoring a goal or two. And again, goals are at a premium this time of year, and they have guys who are so confident and solid in front of goal. So I think that's going to be huge. And like you said, so many of these guys are really hitting their stride and playing their best football at this time of year. And that's what you need.
Absolutely. And just by the way, I kind of hope that York do stick with his 4-3-3, because the other thing it gives them is an extra man in midfield. And that's kind of a spot where they suddenly seem to have a ton of depth, right? They've got Kembo Kibaho and Stephen Yates, who are really, really good together. And then it gets Leonel Lopez a little bit higher up the pitch. And we know how goal dangerous he is. So again, lots of benefits to that kind of structure for York. And a lot to like if you're Maori, Stacchio, heading into the next few weeks.